We're here. We got our special guest. I really, really admire her. I really, really do, and the work that she does. Our America with Lisa Ling is on the OWN network. That's Oprah's network. Yep. And Our America provides an in-depth look at some of the most controversial issues in the world. Today, we're discussing the incarceration generation, which refers to the alarming statistics of black males in jail or prison. Please welcome to the show, Miss Lisa Ling.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning,
Hey, Lisa.
Morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, I tell you, this incarceration generation has turned it up. You know, we've been hearing this, but through this documentary, we'll be able to see a lot of stuff. 1 in 12 African-American men are in prison or jail. How'd you get this information? And tell us more about your findings.
Well, through pretty comprehensive research. And the thing that's disturbing, Steve, is that number is expected to rise to 1 in 3 amongst the younger generation. And if you think about it, this has been a problem for a long time, but I think people have been afraid to address it and not want to discuss it. You go to any prison in America, and there's an overwhelming number of African-American men, and it's now generations of African-American men, because the guys who are in now, many of their fathers were locked up during the 80s, and that's because during the drug war that was launched in the 80s, a disproportionate number of African-American men were locked up, despite the fact that it's well documented that people of all different races are consumers and sellers of drugs. But unfortunately, more black men were arrested as a result.
Well, one of the reasons, and I'm not going to throw you into anything here, but the laws on crack cocaine came out. See, you can get caught with an ounce of cocaine, and get probation, which
that's right,
in the powder form, and get probation, which costs a whole lot more than crack. But the law came down, 3 rocks of crack, mandatory 8 years.
Right, and obviously crack was consumed by more of the African American population than cocaine, which is consumed by a more affluent white community. Exactly. Right. And so many of these young men have been growing up without fathers, and they've been growing up amidst high levels of poverty, and their communities have been ravaged by this poverty. And it's so difficult to break that cycle, because even the most ambitious guy who's in prison, who wants to do the right thing, once you have that convicted label on your record, it's almost impossible to ever get hired for a job. I mean, I know a guy who would submit 15 job applications a day, and he never got a return phone call back. And once you keep slamming doors in people's faces, how do you ever expect them to assimilate back into society? You know, and then someone comes along and says, if you sell a little dope, you can make enough cash to pay your rent. How would you not want to do that? I mean, it's just this cycle that doesn't help anyone succeed when they get out.
Well, that's such a true statement. And now you show in this documentary a lot of the families of men who have been incarcerated, the children that's left without fathers, the sons, the brothers, the fathers. What was that like, especially for the children that get left behind?
Steve, it really puts all of this in perspective. I spent time with a woman who's all of her family members, her father, her brother, and the fathers of her sons were all locked up. And she had these 3 beautiful and smart little boys. And I'm watching them just thinking, please don't allow these boys, please allow them to have a different kind of future than their fathers and all of the men in their lives. But I think it's incumbent upon us as a society. Yes, the men have responsibility, and they have to be committed to trying to do the right thing. But we as a society cannot continue to slam the doors in people's faces. Because if we expect things to change, or if we want things to change, and we want a more productive economy, we need to help people. I mean, once you've done your time, okay, men are sentenced to serve time in prison. Once they've completed it and done their time, they should be offered the opportunity to have a normal life. And they can't when they have this convicted felon label on them.
See, look, there are men in prison who are actually rehabilitated.
That's
mostly through their own mindset to say, hey, man, I can't come back in here no more. I don't need this again. But like you say, if you come out and you can never get a job, there has to be programming set up that allows a person who has made a mistake to correct it. If we don't fix that, go ahead.
No, and a lot of these guys, they're paroled back into the same neighborhoods where they got arrested, and which are often drug infested, crime infested, without any skills and without the opportunity to get a job. And to me, society fails, so this harms entire communities. And if we don't empower our young men, we're talking about an entire generation here, then we're going to perpetuate this cycle indefinitely. And those statistics are enough to want to change this system.
Yeah, it seems to me like I agree with you, Lisa, that we've got to get something in place here to change these laws and the way we view people with criminal records. If a person is inside of a prison and comes out with a clean record, conduct, been programming, been doing the right things, trying to stay on the straight and narrow, there is no more difficult place to do right than in prison. You think doing right at home is hard? Go to prison. So if a guy can come out of there and program, do the right things, get into some type of program to better himself, when he gets out, he deserves a chance. He's paid his debt to society.
And what people need to know is it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Taxpayers need to know that it is very, very expensive to continue to support these prisons and pay for these inmates inside prison. If we give a little bit of rehabilitation, a little training in prison and teach young men some skills, it only benefits us. It only helps our economy, and taxpayers are the burden on taxpayers are reduced. I think that's what people don't seem to understand. People think, okay, well, if he's been involved in any kind of crime, I don't want to know about his past. I don't want to know what he's gone through. Just lock him up and throw away the key.
Right,
and that is costing us so much more money than doing it otherwise.
Right. Now, Lisa, I'm going to ask you when we come back, if you just hang on for a second. I want to ask you when we come back, though. There are people who are, is this true or not? There are people who are profiting off of inmates, though.
Absolutely. Okay.
See, there are businesses. There are farms. There are bakeries.
Business is a business.
There are even people pressing license plates.
Yeah.
There is a free labor pool being done on the other side that people are not acknowledging.
Right.
See, so if it costs the taxpayers this much, if there's a company over here that's benefiting great profits because they have all of this free labor that they pay an 8 cents an hour for, then there is a reason to have more inmates. And ain't nobody addressing that these businesses out here profiting.
The prison system in America is an industry. We have more people locked up in the United States than anywhere else on earth. In fact, China, we're constantly accusing China of human rights abuses and so on and so forth. They're a distant second. We far and away have more people locked up, and 1/3 of that population consists of African American men. So this, to me, is a crisis, and we're talking about generations of black men. And again, I really think it's incumbent upon society to wake up to the fact that this is only going to grow unless we give people opportunities, because, again, this will make our society a more productive one.
Well, let me ask you something. See, I agree 1,000%, giving these people who have paid their debt to society an opportunity. Here is the counter, though. See, when you go to a company that can get an inmate labor for 3 to 8 cents an hour, something like that, 35 cents an hour, or nothing. And then you come in the door as a former inmate saying, can I make $10 an hour? There's no incentive here. There's no incentive to hire the former inmate because we're going to keep the crop of fresh inmates coming so we can get free labor or close to nothing. Why would we hire you? See, that's very disturbing information for me.
Well, here's something that to me is hugely disturbing. In the state of California, the biggest lobby is the prison guard lobby. So there's very little incentive for things to change in the state of California, which has the biggest population in the entire country of prison inmates.
Right.
When I've done a lot of reporting in prisons in California, and when they're not at capacity or greater, the guards would say, I'm sorry. They'd apologize because the prisons weren't entirely full, because they benefit when we have full prisons. And now with so many privatized prisons that are owned by corporations, it only increases their revenue.
Lisa,
the more people they have locked up.
Did you say privately owned prisons operated by corporations?
Oh yes, they're all over the country. Absolutely.
Labor.
See, so here's I'm gonna say this, and Lisa, I want to invite you back on the show so we can do the subject again. See, we're fighting this war backwards, y'all. See, we keep talking about, look, we fighting a college that's a pay-for-profit college when we got to be fighting these pay-for-profit prisons. See, you can't send a boy to college if he in prison. And we got more college-age African-Americans in prison than we do college. Now, we mad at a college because they ain't doing this or they charging this or they ain't doing that. Well, we got to get upset with the real problem here. Corporate-owned prisons. Do y'all hear me?
Yeah.
And we are the farm system for it.
You're listening to the Steve Harvey Morning Show.